Welcome back to the Nutrition Connection podcast, the show where science meets storytelling. I'm your host, Dr. Hicks-Roof, dietitian, researcher, and lifelong advocate of the role of nutrition health and wellness. Each episode, I bring on dietitians and nutrition experts to share their story and give you tips and advice on how to be successful. So whether you're a student, a seasoned professional, or someone simply curious about food, nutrition, and health, this podcast is just for you. The views, thoughts, and comments on this podcast do not reflect those of my employer nor the employers of my guests. So let's go ahead and get connected. I'm super excited to bring on a guest. We're a new connection. We were talking before we got on the show, like, do I know you? And we creep each other out on LinkedIn. We follow each other, but we've never met in person. But we have Kate Richardson. She's a registered dietitian. She's a speaker and author with Nutrition Awareness. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I've been a longtime fan on LinkedIn, and I'm excited and that's actually how I heard about your podcast and all of the cool things you do. And I didn't tell you this. I had mentioned you to a student that I was mentoring in the mentorship program because I was sharing, I'm like, oh, well, you should follow Kristen Hicks because she shares all these niche dietitian jobs and you can really open your mind to all the cool things that you can get into once you graduate. And she was like, wait, Kristen Hicks-Roof, that's the woman who's directing this whole thing. And so I thought that was so funny.
You know, I have my hands in many pots, which is a blessing and a curse. But yeah, sometimes that's so cool. I'm happy that you're in our RD mentorship program. And, you know, that program was built out of, we had no money we've never had money in that program. We just do it out of the gracious of our hearts. And we've had over 10,000 people in the program in the last 10 years.
Amazing.
So it's super cool. And it's like a way, especially for people who want to go into niche roles, like that you're kind of in your own niche area, which I know when you had put your like formal application online, you landed your first TEDx talk. So like, to me, that's like a niche area. Like you're really this like gem in terms of like a nutrition communicator. So I want to dive all into that. But I do want to start from the beginning. Like, what inspired you and made you want to even become a nutrition professional?
Oh man, well, I probably have one of those cliche stories like a lot of dietitians, which was an eating disorder that started in middle school. And I remember when I was really little, I wanted to be like a rock star or a singer or an actress, but I can't sing, I can't really act, I don't have a lot of musical talent. And so I was kind of like just figuring out who I am and where I belong. And I felt totally average as a young person. I felt like I was average talent level, average in academics, average in looks. But then when I found my eating disorder, all of a sudden it just gave me this purpose. It gave me something to cling on to. Like all of a sudden I became the healthy eater. And I remember I was in 7th grade and we would have Papa John's delivered to our school cafeteria every Thursday or something like that. And all my friends would eat pizza and fries. And I would get this little prepackaged salad. I'll never forget because it was a good salad. It had red grapes and big chunks of cheese and some kind of yummy dressing. But I would sit there and I would talk about how much saturated fat was in the pizza. And I would talk about calories. And, thank goodness my friends didn't completely tell me to get lost because I was probably so annoying. But it gave me this sense of identity. And luckily, with time, with self-reflection, I outgrew my eating disorder. And it, in a way, gave me the gift of just being obsessed with nutrition, made me fascinated with anatomy, made me fascinated with body image and food culture and how society impacts our relationship to food. And then, of course, how our body reacts to certain types of food. So while it really wasn't great for my health for a long time or my self-esteem, I'm really grateful that I had an eating disorder because otherwise I wouldn't be where I am today.
Wow. I mean, that is a story. And you're right. A lot of dietitians, they do get in because they've had this personal relationship, whether it's, overweight and obesity, or whether it's eating disorders or being touched by a dietitian who's impacted them with diabetes management or whatever it is. And, I think with eating disorders, they're so prevalent, especially in young girls, but also young boys. And as a mom of 3 little girls, like, what's crazy is like now I know everything nutrition. I'm so terrified. I'm like, how can I help you to not develop that? And so we have a lot of open conversation about food and, I'm the total nerd too. I'm like, did you know this has a lot of vitamin C in it? My daughter's like, so like, I don't care. I'm like, maybe you'll be a dietitian one day. But, I think it is so powerful that not only did it impact where you went, but then also I'm sure it's changed how you frame nutrition conversations in everything you do. So let's talk about your journey. So you decided you want to become a dietitian. What kind of roles have you had? And then ultimately to bring you are to nutrition awareness, which like talk about it. I know there's a podcast and you do a speaking engagement. So to give us a rundown.
Yeah. Well, when I was in college, right, we take a lot of science classes. And I was at college at Missouri State, which was really, really a science heavy program. And looking back, I'm like, I can't believe I picked that program because I had looked at all these other programs that were, their dietetics department was in the home rec department. And in hindsight, I'm like, I think I would have performed better in those kinds of programs. But luckily I went to a science program.
You made it.
And I made it through. And that's where I ended up doing my internship as well. So I realized in my academia, I was never going to get the best grade in medical nutrition therapy. I was getting through organic chemistry by the skin of my teeth. Okay, I'm still shocked I made it through. But where I really thrived was in the motivational interviewing classes and in all the things that I was doing outside of traditional academics. So I was really involved in my sorority. I really liked my social life. I was involved in volunteering. I was involved in leadership. And I really felt, okay, this is where I shine. This is what's going to set me apart. And I think my advisors and the director of the program saw that, and that's how I was able to get that internship. And during my internship, I had the coolest rotation ever. And I don't know if internships still have this or certain programs still allow this, but at Missouri State, we got 8 weeks to design our own experience. And there's a dietitian, Tanya Garrett. She was and still is in a lot of ways, like a dietitian icon to me, because at the time she was the dietitian for Bass Pro Shops, which was headquartered in Springfield, Missouri. And she got to do all this really cool programming where she was designing menus for the cafeteria. We were doing counseling for certain employees. And so she let me for 8 weeks do one-on-one counseling in employee health and wellness. And I was like, this is it. I have found what I want to do. I want to sit here and I want to have real conversations with real people about how hard it is to eat healthy in modern life. Because I felt that way and other people felt that way. And connecting one-on-one just gave me so much insight. It gave me energy. It relit a passion. And like many dietitians, it helped heal parts of me by working with other people. And so I knew from that experience that I was going to find my way into private practice. I got a job from a friend all the way in Orlando, Florida upon graduation. And I was like, let's do it. Let's move to Orlando. My parents were like, wait, what? Why Florida? Eventually, they ended up following me here. And I worked at a hospital, which I recommend to a lot of people. I know that is very controversial, but there are so many great reasons to work in a clinical position right off the bat. And one of the coolest parts for me is I worked at this really, really big hospital system. And everyone that I worked with were dietitians, mostly under the age of 30. And so I got to work with all these young new dietitians. We all had energy. Nobody was like jaded, which I thought was really, really refreshing. And I learned so much. And I got really involved with the community Orlando dietitians group. And the president is now my business partner. She owns Nutrition Awareness. And through our relationship and through my relationship with the dietitians and management at the hospital, when she was ready to bring on a dietitian into private practice, they were like, you've got to talk to Kate. Because on the side of my 9 to 5 clinical job, I was a dietitian speaker for a local fitness group called Camp Gladiator. I was meeting with these people who were campers at Barnes and Noble, at Whole Foods, and they would just give me cash and I would help meal counsel them. And so I was
not going to disclose the cash, guys. We're not.
Yeah. I don't know what I did. It wasn't much cash. I was undercharging.
Which is the story of many dietitians' lives.
Tell me about it, which is something I could go on and on and on about, but I was afraid. And so she caught wind of me. She was like, hey, I want to bring another dietitian on. And that was in 2018, and I'm still there. So we do one-on-one nutrition counseling in person and virtual, but a lot of what we do, and I think what makes us different, especially in this crazy era, is that we still offer an in-person experience to a good market. We have a good market. Orlando is a good market. Obviously, not everyone has the right market to have an in-person practice, but that really energizes me as an extrovert. I think it adds some value. And the cool thing is, it really motivates us to this day to get into our community, to connect with physicians, business leaders, medical professionals, pelvic floor therapists, everybody who has some kind of practice that our ideal clients may be lingering around at. We create relationships. And I think that skill, not only just the counseling skills that I got from 8 years now, or almost 8 years now of one-on-one coaching, but it's the relationship building that
And that
comes along with it.
relationship building can go so far. I remember when I was in corporate wellness, and I love corporate wellness. I see how you got that, that itch to be like, oh my God, this is it. I love this. That was my first job when I graduated, was in corporate wellness. And you're right, like helping those one-on-one where you see this lifelong change in people. And it was even so funny on LinkedIn the other day, which I am connected with many of the former lawyers when I used to do corporate wellness at a law firm. And the lawyer was like, don't worry, Kristen. She responded to me. She was like, don't worry, Kristen. I still do my 10 lunges every time my coffee's brewing. And I was like, oh my God, how easy, because we talked about how to make it very practical and real, because real people, right? Everyday people, it's really hard to change nutrition behaviors,
Yes.
especially when you start to layer multiple jobs, kids, the stress, financial management, like all those things make it really challenging that as dietitians, you almost have to like seed through all the information and say, okay, I think this could work for you. What do you think this would work? So that is really cool that you got to, and the connection that you were able to build with your coworker to be able to brought on at Nutrition Awareness. So let's talk a little bit about your day-to-day. What
Yeah.
does a day-to-day look like for you in terms of connecting with the community and your one-on-ones?
Well, it's changed a lot. So you mentioned having kids. I have an era where it was pre-baby and then post-baby. So my oldest, he just turned 2 years. So 2 years ago, my day-to-day looked a lot different. And I'm really grateful for the experience that I had 2 years ago, because it really laid the foundation of what I want to be doing long term. And so at that time, I was seeing patients 5 days a week, sometimes virtual, mostly in the office. And we had enough business where I felt like that was really what I was doing. I was constantly thinking about, well, how do I get new clients? How do we get people through the door? How do we get people coming back? Learning a lot on the side. Like any of my free time, I was learning about marketing. I was learning about email nurturing, lead generation. And that stuff was really fun and really valuable to learn, because as you know, we typically don't get courses on that. And so just kind of like being in business forced me to think about those kinds of things. And then I had my son, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's my life going to look like? Well, I knew that during my private practice, I started to get inquiries about speaking to groups. Sometimes they would be paid, sometimes they wouldn't be paid. But I was like, yeah, of course, I want to go speak to this random women's business group about nutrition. Or I have a client who works with a bunch of, she's a judge, and they have a healthy judge council. It's all about healthy living for judges. So doing some kind of speaking gig there. And over the years, I had gotten about 30 to 35 random speaking gigs under my belt. And so during this time, I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I started to learn about how much money you could make doing this and how much you could charge. And I was like, oh, this would be something I could do on the side consistently and make it a side gig. And so I got on Google and I was like, how do I become like a more professional speaker? And two things popped up. One is write a book, publish something. It really just makes you, it positions you as an expert. It gives you a whole bunch of street cred. And if I was looking at really popular speakers on the circuit, not even in the nutrition and health space, what do you know? They all had a book. Most of us have never heard of these books, but they're all out there and they're all on Amazon, and you can buy them hardcover, softcover, whatever. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write a book. My business partner, she had published a book. I saw her do it. I thought, I can do that. One of my best friends, her dad in the community. He is on the council of this writing guild. He connected me with a small publishing company. So I blocked off my schedule. This was before baby. Every Thursday for like a year and a half, I would go to a coffee shop and I would write my book. And I could go on about the book writing process if anyone's interested, but I will tell you, I probably won't write a book again.
It is a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. My book is called How to Eat Like a Normal Person, and it's a story workbook. So it's creative and also informative. And then when it was going to get published by this small publishing group, they told me it was going to be published in October. I had just found out I was pregnant, due in May. I was like, great, this is perfect. It'll be published. I'll have 6 months of being able to market the thing, and then I'm clocking out. Well, lo and behold, they had an internal change behind the scenes. And she goes, well, it's actually going to get pushed back and we're going to publish it. I can't remember when she said it'd be published, but it was like 8 months later, after my son was going to be born. So here I am towards the end of pregnancy, working on this book. The night I went into labor, I was still sending final edits of my typeset to my publisher. And my regret is, I mean, it really is no regret. It was out of my control, but I didn't do a lot of marketing for that book. But I'd done it. Now I have a book. It's published. It's legitimate. You can hold it in your hands. I was going to do a TED Talk. That was my next thing. And my business partner for Christmas that year, she gave me a book called How to Do Your First TEDx Talk. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And so I pitched myself to 4 or 5 different TEDx talks, which if anyone's interested on how to do that, it's quite simple. Step 1 is have an idea worth spreading. And step 2 is go on the TEDx website, pick out all the dates and places you're willing to block off or travel to, and just pitch yourself like crazy.
No way. It's that easy?
Well, I'm sure.
I mean, you don't know if you'll get it, but like that's a pretty straightforward process.
Yeah, it's not hard. What you'll do is you'll go to the TEDx site, and once a TEDx event is announced, they'll have their own little website because it's independent from TED. And so if you have a good idea, do not use AI, by the way, to like write your whole script, because the TEDx organizers I've heard about here in Orlando are like, we can see through AI. It's not hard.
Yeah. The structure is so similar that you know when content, even on LinkedIn or other platforms, I'm like, guys, like, why are we using AI generated content? It's not good. It's not authentic.
We're over it. We were all excited at first. We all thought we were bamboozling everyone. Now you're not. So do not use AI. That would be my number 1 tip. And I was talking to another dietitian. Her name is Marianne Walsh. I don't know if you've seen her, but she's done TEDx talks. And she and I met recently at the symposium. And we were like, apparently there's people who will tell you they can guarantee you can get a TED Talk. You just have to pay them thousands of dollars. No, do not do that, because you're already probably going to lose money doing the TEDx talk if you're traveling. You don't get paid to do a TEDx talk. So luckily I found this guy. It was within Florida, within driving distance. He liked my talk. It was Bayshore Boulevard here in Florida in Tampa. And so I got to do a TEDx talk, and that has just changed everything. So now I can say I'm a TEDx speaker. Gives me a lot of confidence to position myself as a professional speaker, which is where I'm moving towards. And I can charge more because I have that credential and more experience.
That's really cool. So, I mean, so you've been kind of developing yourself professionally while working, and this has been over a long period of time. I mean, you said your sons too. So I think that it's a good takeaway that like sometimes these take time to be able to build and grow, and you may be doing things on the side for no money sometimes, and sometimes it is money, but it's that building that credibility. It's so funny that you said like a book brings credibility. I was backpacking in Africa years ago, and I came up with the idea to write a children's book. So I was actually writing it because you had no internet or anything. I was in like rural Southern Africa. And so I like wrote this children's book. I came back, I like paid an illustrator to like illustrate the book. I get it all done. It's published on Amazon. And then I'm like, oh my God, but now there's so much more work. Like I thought that was the work. And then I was like, no, like to get it into bookstores and to get it on a circuit, like that's the real work, And so mine just basically lives on Amazon, but it's worthless.
That's the thing about books, though, is first of all, tell me 2 things. One, do you feel like because you were in nature and having this unique experience, that's how you got the idea?
I think it was. So my book is a children's book, so it's not as in-depth probably as yours. It's a children's book and it's really about nature and food and like growing a garden. So yeah,
Beautiful.
I did have some, and I had a lot of dreams when I was out there because I literally was tent camping across southern Africa. So like one night, like zebras were playing outside my tent. Like I was in rural Africa.
What part?
Yeah, no running water. I mean, we would use water bottles. Yeah, we were like in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I think that's where ideas come from
Yes.
because, I really struggle with being able to clear my brain and clear my head. But every great idea that's come to life for me has always happened when I force myself to just be without something in my ears, someone talking to me, I'm on a walk, I'm somewhere beautiful. It's part of the, I think, professional experience is creating space to just go and be. I think that's really hard for dietitians because we feel like we have to like work a lot to prove our worth and make money because we're as a profession underpaid.
Well,
But
now
what I'm
it's like
hearing is
information overload. I mean, you got podcasts, you have media segments, you got webinars, you got so much like digital content, you have AI generated content. Yeah, I think it is really hard to disconnect, but I agree with you. I think there is a way that you can be refreshed, which is hard. Like now that you have kids, and I have three young kids, you have, family growing, and that is really hard because you always are in demand for one thing or another.
I used to wake up early and journal, and now I'm like, Kate, I think about it all the time. I'm like, why don't you just get up and like journal? I'm not gonna do it right now. I'm just not in that season. I'm not in the I'm going to just dump all of my thoughts on paper, which I even talk about in my TEDx talk. The Morning Pages by Julia Cameron, that whole experience of just putting stuff on paper. And I think that's so important because it really helps you understand yourself and your ideas, but also keeps your communication skills sharp. I just don't have the capacity. I'm 3 months away from having a baby. I've got a toddler, I got a job. One day I'll pick it up again, but I would encourage anybody who's got either a speaking goal, a writing goal, or just like a personal development goal to spend some time every week writing, reflecting without AI.
Yeah, I know. I've taken a lot of writing courses when I was a doc student, and that was one of the feedback. Like, it may be in the morning, it may be in the afternoon, it may be after lunch, it may be at night, whatever. But it was like, you got to be consistent with writing. And sometimes you just write like journal, right? It's not necessarily professional writing. It's how to be continuing to bridge that communication. So, yeah, that I think is good tip and advice, but it's also seasonality. Like, understand where you're at. I mean, my oldest is 8, my youngest is 3. I haven't slept really good in 8 years. So at some point I will get out of that phase. Don't know when that will be, but at some point I will. So let's talk about science and data, right? Of when you are a credentialed expert, a TEDx expert, a speaker, how do you take that science and integrate it into your day to day?
Great. Okay. Couple things here that I think is so important. First of all, if anyone's listening to this and they want to be a speaker, right? They want to do paid speaking events. A professional speaker does a lot of different things, but one of the most important things that I've learned is you have to really understand your audience. Okay, so I just did a talk for an investment banking firm. It was a virtual keynote for their mental health awareness month. They're a totally different audience than the group I did about a month earlier, which was a mix of blue collar and white collar workers in a construction company here local. So they're going to have totally different interests. They're going to have totally different strategies. Different stories are going to relate to them more. So when you are expressing any kind of research, data, or recommendation, you want to tailor that to what really matters to your audience. And that might not be the I think a lot of us dietitians, we want to share health tips and strategies and fun things you can do to like jazz up your plate and add nutrition. A lot of people don't give a crap about that. So you really have to make sure that what you're sharing is not only accurate, because someone can just Google right there during your talk whether that's accurate or true or not, but relevant to that person. So this group I talked to about nutrition for mental health awareness, we were talking about the gut brain connection. And so not only did I have to be really, really mindful about my science, but I had to position it in a way that would appeal to busy professionals who are working 10-hour days, 5 or 6 days a week. This was specific to an employee resource group, so they were all caregivers as well. So it all had to be relevant to them versus the group I was talking to who were blue collar workers. I'm giving more information about dehydration and how that can impact focus and backing that science up. So I really think when you're a speaker, you have to know your audience and you only have 45 to 60 minutes to share information. You better make sure that those little pieces of research or data or strategies that you're plugging in to your keynote or talk is relevant and that they give a crap. And it's going to make them say, like, oh, that actually sparks interest. Because a lot of times as speakers, we are not only trying to help them have a transformation during the talk, right? Like a change of thought, rethinking how they see nutrition, rethinking food, but we also might want to get them into our program, get them as clients, have them follow us on social media, whatever your other goals are. And if you lose them because you're sharing stuff that's not relevant, that talk is not only going to be a flop, but it may not help with your other professional goals as well.
I think that is so critical. Know your audience. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in presentations and I'm like, they're talking about, eating quinoa and avocados and all this other stuff. And I'm like, looking around, I'm like, this audience maybe can't afford it. That makes no sense. That's not in their cultural pattern. Like, not that I'm against any of these foods, but know your audience and who you're talking about. And I think that also comes to the science too. There will be different depths of how deep you can go in the science with some audiences versus others. Not to say that people are dumb, but it's like, how much do you need to simplify it versus like if I'm talking to a bunch of academics, I can like go deep into the methodology of why that science makes sense. If I'm talking to a lay consumer who's coming in for a community diabetes class, like they don't necessarily care if things are, you know what I mean? Like they know the mechanism of diabetes. They may be thinking, what can I do to control my blood sugar? Like that's real of what
Yeah.
I can do. So I think that's
You're
really good advice.
I'm glad you think so because you really do. I don't want to say dumb down what you know, but you do. You have to be like, okay, who am I talking to? I'm just going to assume that they have a beginner intermediate level of nutrition. And if you don't know, ask the event organizers. And so I think a great tip for any speaker is no matter what you're doing, whether you get asked to do a free talk for your kiddo's sports team or you're doing a really high paying talk for a company, is do a pre-event call and treat it like the event. Take it really seriously and you have to ask a lot of questions. Don't just tell them what you're going to talk about, right? You can do that in your pitch. You can do that when they first reach out to you or you reach out to them, but ask a lot of questions. Like what kind of questions does your organization typically ask about nutrition? What are the biggest problems that they're trying to solve? What are the biggest problems you're trying to solve? Because that's another point. Sometimes with speaking as a dietitian, I think that organizations just want their team members to eat healthier and be healthier and blah, blah, blah. Not always. What they might care about is performance, productivity, the bottom line. Maybe they're worried about the costs of medications like weight loss medications, and they want me to talk about how patients or their employees can get the most out of those medications to keep costs down for
100%.
them. So really understanding what's important to not just the audience, but the organizer will really make sure that you're sharing the right relevant information.
And as much as I have a love-hate relationship with AI generated content, I also think you can bounce ideas off of in AI. Like sometimes I'll say, I'm speaking to this audience. I'll pull links about like what that audience is. If it's a business, I'll pull links from the business. I'm like, here's the business. What would be important to people who work at this business? So I'm not saying it's perfect. I agree with you. Ask a lot of questions, but I think we can also do some back end work to really make sure that we're tailoring to the best of our ability. So you've had a lot of successes. I mean, you've checked your boxes. You've been a TEDx speaker, you've written your book, and now you're on your own path to, becoming an independent speaker. But what's been your favorite or something you're most proud of so far?
Ooh, hmm. Well, one thing I'm really proud of since this is coming out in August is that I signed with a speaker agent and they're announcing me this summer. And so we've been working together for a few months, positioning myself, and it really helps me feel like I'm learning so much about the industry. And I think what I'm most proud about that is I hounded her on LinkedIn. I sent her a LinkedIn message because I found her there. I found out she was local. I reached out to a few of her current speakers that are on her roster on LinkedIn, did my due diligence, and felt really, really good. And I don't think I would have had the kahunas to do that 3 years ago. I think I would have been like, oh my gosh, like I'll just wait for her to, I'll like her posts and see if she reaches out to me. But I think one thing I'm really proud of is the personal growth I have felt and just reaching out and making connections, sometimes making connections with an end goal in mind of like, hey, I want you to bring me on this journey you're having. But other times it's just making connections because it feels really good to make connections and reach out. It feels great to make other people feel valued and seen. It feels great to have a new relationship with someone, to have an interesting conversation. And so that's what I would say, on the business side I'm most proud of. And I think on a more personal side, of what I'm proud of is I'm really proud of me and Megan Ware. So she's the owner of Nutrition Awareness. She and I have worked as a team together for quite some time. And I feel like we've made a big impact in the Orlando community. We love what we do. We love our clients. We're growing. We put the client experience above as much as we can and try to go above and beyond with both the people who pay us to help them and the professional relationships that we've created in the community. And although that stuff is really great for business, it also is just great for the soul because you feel a part of something in a digital age where it's really hard.
It is so hard. It is so hard because there's so much information. And I think about an everyday consumer, and I am an everyday consumer. Like, there is so much that I read, hear, see that I'm like, is that true? You know what I mean? Like, wait, no way. And then I'll try it. Oh my God, my kids the other day, they were like, Mom, Dad showed me this TikTok of making puffy paint at home. Let's make it. And I'm like, guys, I'm telling you, like some things that you see online, like, dude, it doesn't work the way that they show this in the video. So we spend like 20 minutes making this puffy paint. Absolute fail. Like, it did not work. It did not come out. And I was like trying to explain that to him because when you're in these digital environments, especially you're working with younger clients, how do you like discern what is real and what's not? I think it's really hard. So being able to go make an impact with people in your community, I think, and having that real life experience with them, whether that's one-on-one or a speaking engagement, like I just think it is so powerful. And we have the credentials behind us to be able to go and do that. So super cool. You talked about a speaking agent, so I'd love for you to dive in a little bit to that, but like, what tips and advice do you have for someone who's maybe interested in a path like yours? And if they're interested in like working with a speaking agent, what does that entail? What do you have to look for?
Yeah, great. Okay, well, as far as speaking with an agent, I can't 100% answer that one because I'm not an agent. And I think I got kind of, I don't want to say I got lucky because I saw her out and my LinkedIn algorithm nudged me towards this. In fact, I didn't really know it was a thing. So as far as working with a speaking agent or an agency, I can't answer that. But for an agency to take you seriously, I think there's some things you need to do. So, first of all, to be a speaker or to be anything, whether you're an author or an artist, you have to treat it like your profession. And so that was a huge switch I made. Before, I would just kind of like do a speaking gig and like show up and like have some talking points. And I have no idea if it was good or not. But then I started working with, and I'm going to plug this woman because she's incredible. She's here in Orlando, but she does virtual everything. Speaking Your Brand with Carol Cox and Diane Diaz. And they're professional speakers and they have speaking down to a science and an art. And there's a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. If you've ever read it,
No, I haven't.
you have to read it because what he says is the artist, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are an educator or a speaker or a painter, is you go from amateur to professional, and the professional does things differently. And so the professional sees themselves as a professional. And so once I read that book, I made this switch of I'm going to see myself as a professional speaker. So I'm going to seek the help of professional speakers. I am going to invest my money and time into building skills to become a speaker because it is an art. Storytelling is an art. Structuring a talk is an art. Connecting with audiences, engaging, all of it is a science and an art, but you have to see yourself as a professional to take it seriously. And so once I started doing that, the book, the TEDx talk, all of those things just felt like the natural next step because that's what a professional would do. And I think to become a professional, you have to put in a lot of repetition. So I'm in this place in my career now where I will say yes to free talks still, especially if it's a favor to a client or if it helps strengthen a relationship or my position in the community. But in the beginning, I would say yes to anything. It doesn't matter what it was. You have to put the reps in, you have to speak. My biggest regret is I didn't get a lot of video footage when I was first on the circuit. So I would say yes to every speaking opportunity you can. I would seek out, I would offer speaking opportunities, and I would get video footage no matter what, because then you can use that to market yourself. So seeing yourself as a professional, speaking as much as possible. We have a podcast that has over 200 episodes. Speaking on a podcast, having one-on-one conversations, literally using your voice in real life and on media is practice. It's putting in the repetitions. But there's nothing like getting in front of an audience, big or small, to really help you see yourself as a professional. And then you can start charging like a professional and feel confident about it. And I will tell you, depending on your audience, don't be afraid to share a rate. And if that person, if they can't pay you, you can adjust from there. But, especially, let's say you have a rate and you shoot out a number and they say, I'm so sorry, I don't have that budget. Well, you can backtrack and say, well, you know what? I really want to help you. I think this would be fun. What if instead of paying me, you videotaped me? Right?
Right.
Or you could find some kind of compromise that will still help you grow your business. But don't be afraid to shoot a rate out there. And sometimes people say yes and you will poop your pants. And you're like, wait, you just said yes to that rate? Oh my God, I can't believe it. And then that's great because then it causes you to step up to the occasion and really prove that you're worth that rate.
Well, and sometimes it can start as easy of a question. One of the things that I've been doing as I do some outside engagements beyond my full-time employment is there an honorarium for this opportunity? Like, I may ask that. It may not start, and they may come back and say, we don't have a budget, or we do have a budget. What did you have in mind? And so sometimes they'll come forward with a number, and sometimes you need to come forward with a number. And I think that's where leaning on mentors and connections, and sometimes just your gut too. You're just like, if it's a nonprofit, it's probably going to be a little bit less money. If it's for a big corporation, you probably can charge a little bit more money. I remember when I had my first writing book, I wrote a healthy toolkit for the Florida Medical Association years ago because I lived in Jacksonville, Florida when I was faculty. And the first time they had me write it, I charged like $2,000. And then I was like, and I thought I was like making bank, you know? And then the second time they're like, we'd love a revised update. And I had grown as a professional, right? And then I was like, it's going to be $5,000. And they were like, yeah, no problem. And I was like, oh my God, I should have got 5,000 the first time. I didn't ask, and so sometimes I think you just have to learn your rate as you're growing too. And once you build that rapport with companies and you build that rapport with community organizations, not only will they maybe come back, but they may talk about you to someone else. And that's where it's like a snowball effect. So I think that was some really good advice and helpful if you want to go down this path. I know I can align with many of those things. So my favorite question, Kate, if you had a crystal ball, what do you think is coming next in nutrition?
You sent me this question in advance, and that's the one that stopped me because I'm battling with that right now. I'm battling with it. I'm not scared, but I'm unsure. It just feels like such a time in the world where like, what's going to happen? I'm going to choose my positive brain for this one because I have a scary brain that I don't want to go down, but then I have the positive brain. And I actually think talking to the students in the mentor program was really helpful. I had 2 students. I think the positive things are a lot of dietitians specifically. So I'm just going to think of more of the role of the dietitian and nutrition professional and not so much nutrition itself. I think we're going to see a different type of career path where people are piecing together 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 different types of work to create one career. I've heard it being called the creator economy or something, where instead of climbing one ladder where you get a position and then you move up in the hospital and then you go to sales and you move up in sales, I think a lot of people are going to be doing a lot of different things, and finding a niche is so important for that. So really understanding who you speak to and why you speak to that person and how they need to be spoken to and on what platforms and on what mediums, I think that's going to become more and more popular than it already is. I think that the human connection is going to be so important to everyone who's already had human connections. As far as our kids, I look at my son, I'm like, are you even going to care about meeting with someone one-on-one? I don't think so. But I'm like, well, for the older millennials like me and like the Gen X's and the boom, like that still matters. So I think it's going to be valuable. But I think why that's really, really valuable is that if you want to grow in this creator economy, nothing beats real life relationships, connections. It doesn't have to be your best friend. In fact, your best friend's usually not the one that's going to refer you to your highest paying gig. It's a loose tie that you met at the Chamber of Commerce because you showed up 4 times in a row and they recognized your face and you finally made a conversation and they brought you in to do something, or they sent 4 of their clients to go see you. Like that is the stuff I really think is going to help dietitians and nutrition professionals position themselves in this rapidly changing tech world. That's pretty terrifying, is just being a constant in your community.
Well, in that creator role, I could totally see it, which in a way is really good for dietitians because many are type A and they're already doing a billion things at once. So I think in a way that is a good thing for us. But 2 is one of the things that we were talking before the show got started about Gisela, who is an expert in LinkedIn. And, some of the data points are showing that like your content generation, whether it's on a podcast or it's on YouTube or it's on a social platform, these are going into AI algorithms and large language models. And so how can you be that credentialed and professional voice in the world of noise? And can that bubble up into recommendations that AI would generate? If you're like, hey, is this good? Is this food good for me? Or how can I find a nutrition expert or a dietitian in my community to give a talk? Well, all of a sudden, Kate's name pops up in the AI and you're like, oh my gosh, this is when I know I made it. So that's mine. Kate, you said your made it is your TEDx talk. Me, I'm like, I want AI to be like, Kristen is the go-to there.
Kristen, have you asked AI how to do that?
No, that's a great idea. Okay, we're going to do this.
Let me tell everyone this. I just learned this last week. Your personal website, okay? What platform do you use?
For AI?
No, for your website.
Okay, so I have nutritionconnection.us. I don't have a personal website. I mean, I have my LinkedIn. That's my personal platform right now.
Okay, here's what I would do if I were you. If you create a personal website, it doesn't even have to be more than 1 or 2 pages. It could just be one long page. You can actually, I use Squarespace. So I asked Claude, I was like, how do I start showing up on AI search engines? It walked me through how to put specific code into the subheadings, the headings of pages of my website. And it's written in this specific way that AI likes. And then it had me create like a page that's not linked, so you can't really find it, that kind of supports all that. And so it used all these keywords and it wrote about me, and I just copy and pasted the code in, and then I practiced it with ChatGPT and I showed up.
No way. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, call to action for everyone listening.
Yes.
There's a great opportunity.
So I would say, like, if you are like a PCOS dietitian, or I'm sorry, I know they changed the name to something else now.
PCOM.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
PMOS.
Yeah. Just ask your preferred search engine, how to show up on AI specifically. I think this is something too, is you have to really think about like, well, what is my ideal client putting in the AI? Like, should I work with a dietitian for endocrine disorders, or who is the very best? Blah, blah. So you can kind of think about that and try to put that stuff in your website in blog form. But yeah, apparently there's code. I just tried it, like I put it in there last week. And so I was talking,
cool.
So
I'm definitely gonna have to try it. So thank you so much, Kate, for being on the show and really telling her story and finishing with the final tidbit of advice of sometimes you just gotta do it to be able to be more present. Sometimes you gotta do it. You gotta say yes to the opportunity. You gotta build your own website, whatever it is. Say yes. So thanks again for being on the show. If you like the show, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a review, but most importantly, check out the next episode, because every episode I bring on a different dietitian and nutrition expert to share their story and give you tips and advice on how to be successful.